Lee Hoon stepped off the transport ship and looked around. Kepler Station was bigger than anything he had ever seen. The walls were made of strange metal that glowed softly. Aliens walked everywhere. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of what seemed like living glass. A few looked like floating clouds of gas. Hoon carried his small bag and followed the signs to the student housing area. Back home in Korea, his grandmother had packed him extra kimchi and told him to study hard. She also told him to be polite to everyone, even if they looked different. Hoon planned to do exactly that. The housing office was run by a tall alien with 4 arms and purple skin. She looked at her screen and then at Hoon. Her face showed surprise and maybe fear. "You are the human?" she asked. Her voice was high and shaky. "Yes, I am Lee Hoon. I am here for the xenobiology program," Hoon said with a smile. The alien backed away from her desk. I will get your room key. Please wait there." She pointed to a spot far from her desk. Hoon thought this was strange, but did what she asked. Maybe aliens needed more personal space. He had read about cultural differences in his preparation classes. A few minutes later, she came back with a room key. She placed it on the desk and quickly moved away. "Room 847B. The map is on your datapad. Classes start tomorrow." "Thank you," Hoon said, but she had already gone into a back room. Hoon found his room easily. It was small but clean. There was a bed, a desk, and a window that showed the stars outside. He unpacked his clothes and his few books. One book was about animal behavior on Earth. His grandfather had given it to him before he left. The next morning, Hoon went to his first class. The classroom was large with curved walls. About 20 aliens sat in different types of chairs. Some chairs had water tanks, others had heat lamps. A few had special air filters. Hoon sat in a regular chair meant for humanoid species. The other students stared at him. Some whispered to each other. A few moved their chairs farther away. Professor Veltar walked in. She looked like a living crystal that changed colors as she moved. "Welcome to Advanced Xenobiology," she said. "Today we will discuss dangerous life forms from death worlds." She looked directly at Hoon. "We are honored to have our first human student. Humans come from Earth, which is classified as a Class 7 death world. This is one of the highest danger ratings in the galaxy." All the alien students turned to look at Hoon. Some looked scared, others looked amazed. Hoon felt confused. Earth seemed pretty normal to him. "Can you tell us about some of the predators from your home world?" Professor Veltar asked. Hoon thought for a moment. "Well, we have chickens on our farm. They can be pretty aggressive, especially the roosters. My grandmother always told me to be careful around them." The classroom went completely silent. An insect-like alien named Crix raised his hand. "Did you say chickens?" "Yes," Hoon said. "They are birds. We keep them for eggs and meat." A gas cloud alien named Thane started to shake. You eat the predators?" Hoon was getting more confused. "Chickens are not really predators. I mean, they eat insects and small things, but they are mostly just farm animals." Professor Veltar pulled up a holographic image. It showed Earth chickens with labels pointing to their claws, beaks, and wings. "Class, observe the razor-sharp talons, the piercing beak designed for tearing flesh, and the powerful wings capable of launching aerial attacks." The alien students gasped. Some started taking notes very quickly. "The human says these chickens are kept as livestock," Professor Veltar continued. This means humans regularly interact with and control these dangerous predators as part of their daily life. Hoon raised his hand. I think there might be some confusion. Chickens are really not that dangerous. My little sister feeds them every morning. The biggest problem is that they sometimes try to steal food from each other. A plant-like alien named Nira spoke up. Her voice was like wind through leaves. You allow your young to approach these death birds? Well, yes, Hoon said. Children on farms usually help take care of the animals. I started helping with the chickens when I was about 6 years old. Several aliens made shocked sounds. Crix dropped his datapad. Thane spread himself thinner across his area, which Hoon guessed meant he was scared. What other creatures do humans interact with? Professor Veltar asked. Hoon thought this was a good chance to make friends. Maybe if he shared more about his home, the other students would feel more comfortable. Oh, we have lots of animals. There are cows, pigs, goats, dogs, cats, horses. My neighbor has bees. My uncle keeps fish in ponds. Each animal name caused more gasps and whispers. Professor Veltar was changing colors very quickly, which made her crystal body flash like a rainbow. Bees, she said slowly. You mean the flying, venomous swarm creatures? They make honey, Hoon said. It is very sweet. We use it in cooking and tea. By now, most of the alien students were writing notes as fast as they could. Hoon heard words like terrifying and impossible and Death World monster tamer. After Yasa class, Hoon tried to talk to some of his classmates, but they all hurried away. Only Crix stayed behind. He kept a safe distance, but seemed curious. Why do you not show fear? Crix asked. Your own description of your world sounds like a nightmare, realm filled with savage beasts. Hoon laughed. They are just animals. If you treat them well and understand what they need, they are usually very friendly. My dog back home loves to play fetch. Our cat sleeps on my bed every night. Crix's compound eyes widened. You sleep with predators? Cats are not really predators, Hoon said. Well, I guess they hunt mice, but they are small and soft and they purr when they are happy. Crix backed away slowly. I think I need to study the safety protocols for interacting with Deathworlders. As Hoon walked back to his room, he felt confused and a little sad. He had hoped to make friends at the academy. Instead, everyone seemed afraid of him. He decided to call his grandmother that evening. Maybe she would have some advice about fitting in at his new school. 2 weeks had passed since Hoon started classes. The other students still kept their distance, but at least they stopped running away when he entered a room. Crix had been assigned as his study partner, which seemed to make the insect alien very nervous. Today was different. Professor Veltar announced they would have their first practical exam. You will observe and document the behavior of a live specimen, she said. This will test your ability to safely study dangerous xenobiology. The class moved to Laboratory 7, which was much larger than their regular classroom. In the center was a massive containment unit made of thick, transparent metal. Inside the unit, something large and dark moved around. This is a Nexari stalker, Professor Veltar explained. It comes from a Class 4 danger world. The creature is highly aggressive and has been known to attack anything that moves. You will work in teams to observe its hunting behaviors. Hoon looked at the creature with interest. It was about the size of a large dog, with dark fur and bright yellow eyes. It had 6 legs and a long tail with spikes at the end. The Nexari stalker paced back and forth, occasionally hitting the walls of its cage. The other students put on heavy protective suits. The suits looked like armor and had thick helmets with air filters. They also carried various scanning devices and stayed far from the containment unit. "Mr. Lee," Professor Veltar said, "you will need protective equipment as well." Hoon looked around. "What kind do humans use?" "The same as everyone else," she replied, looking confused. Hoon put on one of the suits, but it was made for a different species and did not fit well. The helmet kept sliding down over his eyes. He took it off and set it aside. "I think I will be fine without it," he said. "The creature is safely contained." The alien students stared at him in shock. Even with their protective suits, they seemed nervous about being in the same room as the Nexari stalker. Crix moved closer to Hoon, but kept his protective suit on. "Are you certain you do not want armor? That creature could break free." "The containment looks very strong," Hoon said. "Besides, I can observe better without the helmet blocking my view." The practical exam began. Each team was supposed to document the creature's behavior for 30 minutes. Hoon took out his notebook and started writing. The Nexari stalker was interesting to watch. It moved like a cat that was looking for something to hunt. "It reminds me of Mr. Kim's old tomcat," Hoon said to Crix. "What is a tomcat?" Crix asked, his voice muffled by his helmet. "A male cat. Mr. Kim's cat was always prowling around our farm looking for mice or birds. It moved just like this creature." The Nexari stalker suddenly charged at the wall of its container. It hit the transparent metal with a loud bang. All the alien students jumped back and some screamed. A few dropped their equipment. Hoon did not move. He watched the creature carefully and made more notes. "Interesting," he said. "It seems frustrated rather than truly aggressive. See how it attacks the same spot repeatedly? That is attention-seeking behavior." "Attention-seeking?" Crix asked. He was now hiding behind a table. "Yes. Animals do this when they are bored or want interaction. My grandmother's dog used to bark at the fence the same way when he wanted someone to play with him. 20 minutes. Into the exam, the lights in the laboratory started flickering. An alarm began to sound. The containment unit's display screen showed warning messages in red text. "Power fluctuation detected," an automated voice announced. "Containment field at 60% strength." Professor Veltar moved quickly to a control panel. "Everyone remain calm. This is a minor technical issue." The containment field around the Nexari stalker started to flicker like a broken light bulb. The creature became more agitated. It threw itself against the walls harder and made loud, screeching sounds. "Containment field at 40%, the voice announced. The alien students began to panic. Thane spread himself as thin as possible and started floating toward the exit. Nira extended sharp thorns from her arms and legs. Other students ran for the emergency doors. "Evacuation protocol activated," Professor Veltar announced. "All students must leave the laboratory immediately." The alien students rushed toward the exits. Some were screaming. Others were shouting warnings in their own languages. Crix grabbed Hoon's arm with one of his clawed hands. "We must flee," Crix said. "The death beast will escape." Hoon looked at the Nexari stalker. The creature was now throwing itself against the flickering containment field with all its strength, but something about its behavior caught his attention. "Wait," Hoon said. "Look at how it is moving." "Moving?" "It is trying to kill us," Crix replied. "No, look closer. See how it keeps glancing at the exit? And notice how it hits the same weak spot in the containment field?" The creature suddenly stopped its frantic attacks and sat down. It stared directly at the fleeing students and made a sound that was almost like whining. "It is scared," Hoon said with surprise. All this noise and flashing lights have frightened it. It wants to get away from here, not attack anyone." "Scared?" Crix asked. "But it is a Deathworld predator. So are Earth cats, according to your classification system. But they get scared too. By now, all the other students had evacuated. Only Hoon, Crix, and Professor Veltar remained. The professor was still working at the control panel, trying to fix the containment field. "Mr. Lee," she called out, "you must evacuate immediately. I cannot guarantee the containment will hold." "May I stay and observe?" Hoon asked. "This is very interesting behavior. I have never seen a frightened Nexari stalker before." Professor Veltar's crystal body flashed bright red with shock. "You want to stay? Near and potentially escape Deathworld predator? The containment is still working, just weakened. And look at the creature now." The Nexari stalker had moved to the far corner of its container. It was making soft, whimpering sounds and seemed to be trying to make itself as small as possible. Every time the alarm sounded, it flinched. "I think the loud noises are hurting its ears," Hoon said. "Many animals have sensitive hearing." Professor Veltar managed to stabilize the containment field at 70% strength. The flickering stopped, and the alarms went quiet. Almost immediately, the Nexari stalker calmed down. It stopped whimpering and began grooming itself like a nervous cat. "Remarkable," Professor Veltar said. "In all my years of studying these creatures, I have never observed stress behaviors like this." Hoon continued taking notes. "It makes sense, though. Take any animal out of its natural environment, put it in a small space with strange sounds and lights, and it will become stressed. Add sudden loud noises and flickering lights, and of course it will panic." Crix slowly came out from behind the table. "You mean it was not trying to escape to hunt us?" "I think it just wanted to find somewhere quiet and safe to hide," Hoon said. When the other students finally returned with security teams, they found Hoon calmly finishing his observation notes, while the Nexari stalker napped peacefully in its restored container. The following week, Professor Veltar decided to continue the practical lessons with the Nexari stalker. She had been impressed with Hoon's observations during the power failure. The other students were less excited about returning to laboratory. 7. "Today we will study predator-prey relationships," Professor Veltar announced. "The Nexari stalker will be presented with various stimuli to observe its hunting responses." Hoon noticed that his classmates were wearing even more protective gear than before. Some had double layers of armor. Thane had compressed himself into the smallest possible form and was hiding inside a protective bubble. The Nexari stalker looked calmer today. It was lying in a corner of its containment unit, watching the students with curious yellow eyes. When it saw Hoon, it actually moved closer to the transparent wall. "Interesting," Hoon said to Crix. "It seems to recognize me." "Recognize you?" Crix asked nervously. "You mean it is selecting you as its preferred prey?" "No. I think it just remembers that I stayed calm during the emergency." Animals notice things like that. Professor Veltar began the lesson by activating various devices that made different sounds and movements outside the containment unit. The Nexari stalker responded by moving toward each stimulus, but not in an aggressive way. It seemed more curious than dangerous. "Note how the creature investigates each new element," Professor Veltar said. "This shows intelligence and adaptability." Halfway through the class, disaster struck. A maintenance robot malfunctioned in the walls above Laboratory 7. It fell through a ceiling panel and crashed into the containment unit's control system. Sparks flew everywhere and several screens went dark. The containment field around the Nexari stalker flickered once and then completely disappeared. For a moment, everything was completely silent. The Nexari stalker stood up and looked around, seeming as surprised as everyone else. Then chaos began. Thane screamed and tried to disperse into the air vents, but the emergency system sealed all openings. Nira extended every thorn and spike she had, turning herself into a living cactus. Other students activated personal shield generators or dove behind laboratory tables. Emergency lockdown activated. An automated voice announced. All exits sealed. Until threat is contained. Crix grabbed Hoon's arm. We are trapped with a Deathworld predator. The Nexari stalker stepped out of its damaged container. It looked around the laboratory with wide eyes. All the screaming and flashing lights seemed to confuse it. It made a low growling sound and crouched down. Everyone remain still, Professor Veltar commanded. Do not make sudden movements. But the alien students were too frightened to listen. Several were running around the laboratory, looking for places to hide. Their movement and noise made the Nexari stalker more agitated. It began to stalk toward a group of students who were cowering behind some equipment. Hoon watched the creature carefully. Its body language reminded him of something he had seen many times before. It is hurting them, Hoon said quietly. Hurting? Crix asked. Like a sheepdog. It is trying to gather everyone into one place. That is not aggressive behavior, that is. Protective behavior. But the alien students did not understand this. They saw the approaching predator and panicked even more. Some started throwing small objects at the creature to try to drive it away. This only made the Nexari stalker more confused and upset. The creature cornered Nira and two other students near the emergency exit. It was making louder growling sounds now and showing its teeth. The students were screaming and trying to climb the walls. Someone has to do something, Professor Veltar said. The security team cannot get through the lockdown. Hoon stood up. I will try to help. Are you insane? Crix asked. It will kill you. I do not think so, Hoon said calmly. He started walking slowly toward the Nexari stalker. The creature noticed him immediately. It turned away from the cornered students and focused on Hoon. Its ears were flat against its head and its tail was twitching nervously. Easy, Hoon said in a soft voice. You are scared, are you not? All this noise and running around. The Nexari stalker took a step toward him, but Hoon did not run or show fear. Instead, he sat down on the floor and made himself smaller. That is what I thought, Hoon continued in the same gentle voice. You are not trying to hurt anyone. You just want everyone to calm down so you can figure out what is happening. The creature stopped growling. It tilted its head and studied Hoon with intelligent eyes. My grandfather taught me about animals like you, Hoon said. When the farm dogs got scared during thunderstorms, they would try to gather all the chickens and sheep in one place. They thought they were protecting everyone. Hoon slowly extended his hand, palm down, the way his grandfather had taught him to approach nervous animals. The Nexari stalker sniffed the air and took a cautious step forward. You can smell that. I am not afraid, Hoon said. That is good. Fear makes everything more difficult. The classroom was completely silent now. All the alien students had stopped screaming and were watching in amazement. The Nexari stalker moved closer to Hoon and carefully sniffed his extended hand. There. Hoon said. You see, I am not a threat to you, and you are not a threat to me. The creature sat down in front of Hoon, just like a dog waiting for instructions. Its tail stopped twitching and its ears relaxed. "Now," Hoon said, still speaking softly, "I think you are hurt. You have been limping on your front left leg." He was right. The Nexari stalker had injured its paw when it first escaped from the damaged container. It was holding the leg slightly off the ground. "May I look at that?" Hoon asked. To everyone's amazement, the creature actually lifted its injured paw toward him. Hoon examined it gently and found a small cut from the broken containment unit. "This needs to be cleaned," Hoon said. "And you need somewhere quiet to rest while it heals." He looked around the laboratory and spotted a storage closet. "Would you like to rest in there? It is dark and quiet." Hoon stood up slowly and walked toward the closet. The Nexari stalker followed him like an obedient pet. He opened the closet door, and the creature went inside willingly. "I will leave the door open so you do not feel trapped," Hoon said. "When the security team arrives, I will explain that you are injured and scared, not dangerous." The Nexari stalker curled up in the closet and closed its eyes. Within minutes, it was sleeping peacefully. Hoon turned around to find every alien in the laboratory staring at him in complete silence. Professor Veltar's crystal body was flashing colors so rapidly it looked like a strobe light. "How?" she finally asked. "It was just scared," Hoon said with a shrug. "Scared animals need patience and understanding, not more fear." The emergency team arrived 30 minutes later, expecting to find chaos and possibly injured students. Instead, they found everyone sitting quietly while Hoon kept watch over the sleeping Nexari stalker in the storage closet. "What is the situation?" asked Commander Zek, the head of station security. He was a large, armored alien with multiple weapons. Professor Veltar quickly explained what had happened. Commander Zek looked at Hoon with disbelief. "You approached an escaped Deathworld predator. Without weapons or protection?" he asked. "It was not really dangerous," Hoon said, "just confused and hurt." Commander Zek activated several scanning devices and pointed them at the sleeping creature. "Scanners show no aggressive pheromones or elevated stress hormones. This is unusual. The creature is injured," Hoon explained. "Its front left paw has a cut that needs medical attention. I think that is part of why it was so upset." Dr. Yala, the station's xenobiological medic, arrived with her team. She was a tall, blue-skinned alien with 6 arms that could extend and bend in impossible ways. "Where is the injured predator?" she asked, carrying what looked like a medical stun weapon. "Sleeping in the closet," Hoon said. "But I do not think you will need that weapon. May I help you examine the injury?" Dr. Yala stared at him. "You want to help examine a Nexari stalker?" Trust me now," Hoon said. "If I am there, it will be less scared when strangers approach." After some discussion, Dr. Yala agreed to let Hoon assist. The other students watched from behind protective barriers as Hoon gently woke the sleeping creature. "Hello again," Hoon said softly. "This is Dr. Yala. She wants to help with your injured paw." The Nexari stalker opened its yellow eyes and looked at the medical team nervously. But when Hoon placed his hand on its head and continued speaking in calm tones, the creature relaxed. "Remarkable," Dr. Yala whispered. "Its stress levels are almost normal." She carefully examined the injured paw, while Hoon kept the creature calm by talking to it and gently stroking its fur. The cut was not serious, but it had become infected. "I need to clean the wound and apply medicine," Dr. Yala said. "This might hurt a little." Hoon nodded and continued speaking to the Nexari stalker. "She is going to help you feel better. It might sting, but then your paw will heal properly." The creature whimpered slightly when Dr. Yala cleaned the wound, but it did not try to bite or escape. It kept looking at Hoon as if asking for reassurance. "You are being very brave," Hoon told it. "Much braver than our old farm dog when he needed medicine." While Dr. Yala worked, Hoon noticed other things about the creature that the panic had prevented anyone from seeing before. "Look at its eyes," he said to Professor Veltar. "They show intelligence, but also sadness. I think it has been lonely." "Lonely?" Professor Veltar asked. "Nexari stalkers are pack animals in the wild, are they not? This one has been alone in that container for months. Social animals get depressed when isolated." Dr. Yala finished treating the wound and wrapped it in a healing bandage. "The infection should clear up in a few days." "What happens to the creature now?" Hoon asked. Commander Zek stepped forward. "Standard protocol is to return it to maximum security containment." "But it is not aggressive," Hoon said. "Could it not have a better living space? Maybe with enrichment activities to keep it from getting bored?" "Enrichment activities?" Commander Zek asked. "For a predator?" "Mental stimulation. Puzzle feeders, climbing structures, things to investigate. Animals need more than just food and shelter to be healthy." Dr. Yala was taking notes rapidly. "This is fascinating. Our current containment methods may actually be causing behavioral problems in the specimens." Hoon spent the next hour working with the medical team and the creature. He showed them how to approach it calmly, how to read its body language, and how to provide basic care without causing stress. The Nexari stalker seemed to enjoy the attention. It even played a simple game with Hoon, gently batting at a piece of cloth he moved around like a cat toy. "It is playing," Professor Veltar observed. "I have never seen documented play behavior in a Nexari stalker." "All intelligent animals play," Hoon said. "It is how they learn and stay mentally healthy." By the time they finished, the Nexari stalker was much calmer and happier. Its injured paw was properly treated, and it had experienced positive social interaction for the first time in months. "I have a proposal," Dr. Yala said to Commander Zek. "What if we modify the containment protocols based on Mr. Lee's observations? Better living conditions might make the specimens easier to study and less dangerous to handle." Commander Zek was reluctant, but the evidence was hard to argue with. The creature that had terrified an entire classroom was now peacefully sitting next to Hoon and letting alien medical students examine its teeth and claws. "We will try an experimental program," he finally agreed. "But Mr. Lee will need to be involved in training the staff on these new methods." "I would be happy to help," Hoon said. As the medical team prepared to move the Nexari stalker to a new, improved habitat, the creature looked back at Hoon and made a soft, chirping sound. "It is saying goodbye," Hoon said with a smile. Crix, who had been watching everything from behind a protective barrier, finally approached. "How did you know it would not attack you?" "I did not know for certain," Hoon admitted. "But I could see it was scared, not angry. On Earth, we have a saying: a cornered animal is dangerous, but a frightened animal just wants to feel safe." "And you were not afraid at all?" Nira asked. Hoon thought about this. "I was a little nervous, but I was more curious than afraid. It reminded me so much of animals I had known back home." Professor Veltar approached him. "Mr. Lee, would you be interested in doing an independent study project on interspecies behavioral analysis? What happened here today could change how we approach xenobiology." "That sounds very interesting," Hoon said. As the class ended and everyone prepared to leave, Hoon realized something had changed. His classmates were no longer afraid of him. Instead, they looked at him with respect and amazement. "You are not what we expected from a Deathworlder," Crix said. "What did you expect?" Hoon asked. "Violence, aggression, conquest," Thane said, reforming into a more solid shape. "Instead, you showed us compassion and understanding," Hoon smiled. "Maybe death worlds teach us things that safe worlds cannot. When you live with dangerous animals, you learn that understanding them is better than fearing them." 1 month later, Kepler Station had changed. The story of the human who calmed a dangerous predator with kindness had spread throughout the entire facility. Hoon had become something of a celebrity, though he did not really understand why. He was walking to the cafeteria when Park Dobbin, another human exchange student studying engineering, caught up with him. "Hoon," she called out, "did you see the news feed? They are calling you the Death World Whisperer now." Hoon sighed. "I wish they would stop with these dramatic names. I just helped a scared animal." "A scared animal that could have killed everyone in that room," Dobbin reminded him. "The alien students think you have magical powers." They entered the cafeteria together. Immediately, conversations stopped and heads turned to look at them, not with fear this time, but with curiosity and respect. Crix waved them over to a table where several other students were sitting. "Hoon, perfect timing. We were just discussing the new habitat design for the Nexari stalker." The new containment area was much larger and more comfortable. It had climbing structures, puzzle feeders, and even a small pool. Most importantly, it had windows that allowed the creature to see other beings without feeling trapped. "How is our friend doing?" Hoon asked. "Much better," Neera replied. "The medical team says its stress levels are the lowest they have ever recorded in a captive Nexari stalker. And it has gained weight, which means it is eating properly." Thane floated closer to the table. "It even learned to recognize different staff members. Dr. Yala says it gets excited when it sees people it likes." Hoon felt happy hearing this. Social recognition is a sign of good mental health in pack animals. Speaking of which, Professor Veltar approached their table. "Mr. Lee, your research paper has been accepted by the Journal of Interspecies Behavioral Studies. Congratulations." Hoon's paper was titled Comparative Analysis of Stress Responses in Earth Farm Animals and Class 4 Predators. It argued that many behaviors labeled as aggressive in alien species were actually signs of stress, fear, or loneliness. The review board was particularly impressed with your section on enrichment activities, Professor Veltar continued. 3 other research stations have requested copies of your protocols. "That is wonderful," Hoon said. "I hope it helps other animals in captivity." "There is more news," she said with excitement. "The Galactic Council has invited you to present your findings at the annual Xenobiology Conference. You would be the first human ever to speak at the event." The alien students around the table made impressed sounds. This was apparently a very big honor. "When is the conference?" Hoon asked. "Next month." "Oh, and there is something else. The conference organizers want you to do a live demonstration with a Class 5 predator." Dobbin nearly choked on her drink. "A Class 5? Those are even more dangerous than Nexari stalkers." "What kind of creature?" Hoon asked, curious rather than worried. "A Vortan razor cat. It is about twice the size of a Nexari stalker, with natural armor plating and retractable claws that can cut through metal." Hoon thought about this. "What is its natural behavior? Is it a pack animal or solitary?" "Solitary hunter, but they form temporary partnerships during mating season," Professor Veltar replied. "Interesting. So it would be used to some social interaction, but not constant companionship. Does it mark territory?" Yes, extensively. Then it probably gets stressed when it cannot establish proper territorial boundaries. Most territorial animals do. The alien students exchanged looks. Here was Hoon, calmly discussing the behavioral patterns of a creature that could easily kill him, as if they were talking about the weather. "Are you actually considering doing this demonstration?" Crix asked. "Why not?" Hoon said. "If the research can help improve conditions for these creatures, it is worth trying." 2 weeks before the conference, a new group of exchange students arrived at Kepler Station. Among them were 3 more humans. Hoon was excited to meet them and offered to show them around. The alien students had prepared a special orientation session. They called it Survival Guide for Interacting with Deathworlders. Hoon and Dobbin watched from the back of the room as Crix presented a slideshow to the new arrivals. "Rule 1, Crix announced. Never ask humans about their home planet. Animals. They will casually describe terrifying predators as if they were harmless pets." The new alien students took notes frantically. "Rule 2. If a human says something is no big deal, prepare for your worst nightmares." Human Lee Hoon once described creatures called geese as a little aggressive sometimes. Research shows these are violent winged predators that attack in organized formations. Hoon whispered to Dabin, "Geese are not that scary." "Shh," she replied, trying not to laugh. "Rule 3, Thane continued the presentation. Humans have no fear response to creatures that would terrify any reasonable being. Human Lee Hoon once petted an Nexari stalker. We have video evidence." One of the new students, a crystalline being similar to Professor Veltar, raised her hand. "Are all humans like this, Lee Hoon?" "We are still conducting research," Nira replied seriously. "But preliminary evidence suggests that all Deathworlders share certain traits: impossible courage, casual interaction with deadly fauna, and the ability to remain calm in situations that would cause mass panic among civilized species." The 3 new human students looked confused. One of them, a young man named Kim Tae-jun, raised his hand. "Excuse me," he said, "but I am afraid of spiders. Does that disqualify me from being a proper Deathworlder?" The alien students immediately started taking notes. This was apparently important new data. After the orientation, the new humans found Hoon and Dabin. "What was that about?" asked Lee Min-seo, one of the new students. "Long story," Dobbin said. "Basically, everyone here thinks we are all fearless monster tamers because Hoon made friends with a dangerous predator." "You made friends with a predator?" Kim Tae-jun asked with amazement. "It was scared and hurt," Hoon explained. "I just helped. It feel better." The new students wanted to hear the whole story. As Hoon told them about the Nexari stalker incident, more alien students gathered around to listen. Soon there was a crowd. The best part, Crix added, was when Hoon mentioned he also worked with bees. The entire class needed medical attention for panic attacks. "Bees?" Lee Min-seo asked. "Like honeybees?" "You know about the venomous swarm." "Creatures, too?" Thane asked in horror. "They make honey," Min-seo said. "My family keeps them." This caused another round of note-taking and whispered conversations among the alien students. "Wait until they find out about spiders," Dobbin said quietly to Hoon. "What about spiders?" Kim Tae-jun asked nervously. Before anyone could answer, Professor Veltar approached the group. "Mr. Lee, I have an update from the conference organizers. They were so impressed with your preliminary findings that they want to extend your presentation. Instead of just the Vortan Razorcat demonstration, they want you to work with 3 different species." "What species?" Hoon asked. "A Razorcat, a crystalline shrieker, and a void serpent. The alien students went completely silent. Even the new, human students looked worried. "Those are all Class 5 or higher predators," Crick said quietly. "Are they social animals?" Hoon asked. "The crystalline shrieker is highly territorial. The void serpent is an ambush predator that rarely interacts with other creatures. And you already know about the razor cat." Hoon nodded thoughtfully. "Territorial animals need clear boundaries. Ambush predators need places to hide and feel secure. This will be interesting." As the group dispersed, the alien students could be heard making plans to attend the conference. Apparently, watching a human interact with 3 different Deathworld predators was too incredible to miss. "Are you nervous about the conference?" Dobbin asked as they walked back to their dormitories. "A little," Hoon admitted. "But mostly excited. If this works, it could help a lot of animals in captivity throughout the galaxy." "And if it does not work?" Hoon smiled. "Then I suppose I will become a very short entry in xenobiology textbooks as an example of why Deathworlders should not be left unsupervised around dangerous predators." "That is not very reassuring," Dobbin said. "Do not worry," Hoon replied. "My grandmother always said that if you treat animals with respect and try to understand what they need, they will usually respond with trust instead of aggression." "Your grandmother sounds very wise." "She is. She also told me to always pack extra kimchi when traveling to new places." Hoon patted his bag. "I still have some left if you want to share it for dinner." As they walked away, neither of them noticed the group of alien students following at a safe distance, still taking notes about the mysterious ways of Deathworlders.